Welcome again to the Talking Pictures podcast with hosts Tony Toscano, CiCi Chambers, and Raquel Baldwin Horton.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Talking Pictures podcast. We are in an echo chamber this morning, but it's okay, we'll get through. I'm Tony Toscano.
I am CiCi Chambers.
I'm Raquel Horton.
And I am Marshall Moore.
Marshall Moore is our special guest. Let's hear it for Marshall.
Yay, Marshall!
Yay.
Well, let's hear it for everyone else.
Sit down, you people. Marshall, of course, has grown up in the industry. He was an actor as a child, has been behind the camera, working production, became the film commissioner of the state of Utah, which is where we met. I think we met before that. I think we must have met on by Touched by an Angel because I was...
Yeah, I was on that show for 8 seasons, so we probably crossed paths somewhere.
I was in an episode with Zachary Quinto.
Okay.
And Jack Black.
Yes, I remember when Jack Black was. I didn't know Zachary Quinto then. Until now.
And then we shot at K-Jazz where it was.
I remember that too. Yeah. So we definitely probably passed and hit bump shoulders or something.
And then, of course, now you're running the infamously famous and wonderful Park City Film Studios.
Yes, I've been there for about a year and a half, and I've seen it open to a big network television series, Blood and Oil, for 6 months, and then since then it's been a patchwork of independent film, commercials, and corporate events.
Yeah, so
Is there anything coming up soon at the Film Commission Studios that you can tell us about?
At the film studios? Well, it's interesting because, until we're under contract with something, I don't typically talk about what's coming, but I will tell you we're in discussions with quite a few companies. Right now, the only thing I know that's coming for sure are a couple of national commercials, which will fill the building in the fall.
Now, national commercial, people may think they're shot at like in one day.
No, multiple days, thank goodness, yeah.
They can be. I know one that took 6 months to shoot. So
what was that?
It was it was with Ali Lauder. It was a Doritos commercial that they did for the Super Bowl. This was about 8 years ago. It took them 6 months because they had to change her hair. She was growing her hair, and they had to show the hair growing. It was amazing.
That's what extensions are for now these days.
Yeah. Special effects are for.
They didn't have them back then.
Or shooting it in reverse and just cutting it off.
Starting long and just cutting. Yeah, exactly.
No, they wanted to do it that way, but also Park City Film Studios is deep in the heart of Sundance, the film festival, and hopefully this year you will be an actual venue.
A sanctioned venue or something like it, meaning where Sundance Film Festival sponsors host events at the studio. And it's perfect for that because, well, let's see. In May, we hosted a corporate event with 1,000 people in the building and the band Leonard Skinner. And so we tested the capacity of it. Fire Marshal came out and did all his approvals, and we were able to host,
By the way, Park City has the greatest fire marshal I think I've ever met. He's really very funny.
Kurt Simister?
Yes. Shout out to Kurt.
Yes, we know him very well.
He's hilarious. Anyway, you working in film as long as you haven't been on both sides of production, and you deal with a lot of young filmmakers, new filmmakers who are doing their first or second movie. They have some kind of a little budget. What are the mistakes that traditionally new or young filmmakers make in kind of putting together a film?
Well, my background is, you probably know, we didn't mention on the show yet, was I was a location manager for 20 plus years before I joined the staff of the Film Commission. So what I would say to that is a lot of it is logistics. I think they miss the logistics and how much time it takes to actually set certain things up that they want to do. When we put the camera somewhere, what's going on around the camera and the amount of time it takes sometimes to get it right, to get people notified properly that are in the area. to tell them what's going on, to find your parking places, to find your bathrooms, to find where the catering's going to be, to see if you need traffic control or not. All those details of the logistics aren't really thought of by the young filmmaker. They just want to make the movie. They want to get the actors out in front of the camera, get some great performances, and not worry about everything else.
Catering.
I think
Yeah.
Well, they do care about that. I mean, it's like there's food all day long.
Who needs it?
Yeah, as soon as I left working in the film industry, right, I showed up at the state office on the first day. I'm like, "Where's the food?" and the staff was so funny about it. They realized I was missing the craft service, and I showed up the next day, and there was like a Hershey's Kiss and a peanut butter cup sitting on my desk with a little note that says, "Here's your craft service."
The honey wagon left.
But no, all those details, I think, and I think once they go through it, once they understand that that's all part of the process of making a film or a TV show.
In putting together, I mean, there has to be some kind of checklist that either the commission hands out or you hand out to make sure that they cover all of this.
Right. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it. Yeah, I mean, the Film Commission certainly has lists of things that need to get done in processes. If you're in a certain jurisdiction, a city will say, here's what you have to do to be able to film in this city or this county or this town. So, or you create your own list just because you know what needs to be done in order. And that's what I typically started to do over time is I would know the list. But in the beginning, like you said, the young filmmakers, they're still learning what it takes.
Or even old people who just start. So what is the most
Well, you're still young in the industry, though.
Yeah. So what is the most calamitous FUBAR day of filming you've ever witnessed due to people not fulfilling what they should have done?
I don't know if it really is that. I recall one day on a set, and I was directly involved in this, that we had chosen a particular location in Farmington, and it was a farm location, and I'd done my notifications of all the neighbors and everything, but there was this one house that seemed to be empty every time I went into the neighborhood, and we were going to be here for like a week. And so we set up to shoot, and then I noticed a bulldozer pulls up across the street. And I'm like, that doesn't look good. And I'm like, is he just dropping that thing off?
That's not going to sound good either.
And then all of a sudden, he's like, I'm here to tear down that house over there across the street, literally, 30 feet away from our primary filming location. So I had to basically, they were nice to a point and would work with us on the rolls and the cuts, so we could roll, and then he'd knock down the house, and then we would roll. He would stop his work.
Yeah.
We would cut. He'd go back to work.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I had to give him some cash and some, beverages.
Craft service comes in handy.
Well, not even. It was a little more than craft service. If you catch my drift.
I know the beverages.
Yes, exactly.
The beer barn
But
drive-through.
then a really good director and filmmaker would write that whole knocking down the house into the script.
Well, let me tell you, an experience that actually happened. So, I was mentioning earlier that I worked on Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Part of the storyline was there's a massive earthquake, and Freddy is causing the earthquake by coming up from underneath the ground, right? We were shooting this movie in January of 1994 in Los Angeles. If you recall what happened in January of 94, the Northridge earthquake. Okay, very big one. Shut down production for 3 days. But on the third day of shutdown, the producers got this great idea that we would actually go out into the damage and put it on film and make it part of the movie. So if you watch Wes Craven's New Nightmare,
So interesting.
the damage you see as Heather Langenkamp is driving through L.A., the damage that's supposed to be being caused by Freddy was actually caused by the Northridge quake of 94. So that's actual footage.
Hey, man,
it's
it
fun to look
saves
at.
on set, so on props.
So we did. We got in a van. We kind of went grill side because the permit office, the LA permit office, would not issue permits during that period of time. But we did have a police officer escort with us. We got in a van. We popped out at certain spots that we had mapped out, that we had seen on the news that were like the worst damaged places, and set the camera out on sticks, got the car, did a little drive-by, and boom. There it is. So that can happen.
Wow. And there's also good things. I mean, people come to Utah all the time, and I always do this when I'm with you, but it's almost like a love letter to Utah. That we have such a variety of looks. Mm-hmm. We could be anything to anyone. I mean, it's almost like New Zealand and how they sell New Zealand. Whereas, you 10 minutes you have snow, 5 minutes you have desert, And we're kind of the same way. Are we starting to get that back into that kind of Hollywood backlot feel that we are Hollywood's backlot?
That's why John Ford came to and filmed in Utah a lot.
That's right. I mean, it was all about the red rock and the unique formations and the West. Hollywood basically created the look of the West.
Yeah. It wasn't really like that.
No, it wasn't. None of them came through Monument.
Or outer space. I mean, I remember the Planet of the Apes was,
yes.
shot here too.
Or Plan 9.
Or Independence Day. Those are all filmed out here.
But I mean, if you look at a show because I worked on Touched by an Angel, we did 215 episodes of that show. Almost every single episode took place in a different locale in the script. I think maybe 3 times it was Utah or Salt Lake City, and the rest were other places in the world.
But it was here.
But it was all here. The only time we left was to film in San Diego at the beach.
Yeah.
And even that, the only other time we traveled was to Moab.
And that's a question I have. Are people getting more savvy to Hollywood that they can charge for use of their house or whatever? Because it used to be, they would be honored to have, Roma Downey's in it. Yeah, okay, I'll bake cookies. Can I be in it? And it's never like that, is it? People just go, I'm going to...
I would never do that to anybody, because the second the crew descends, and no matter how much you've told them, there's going to be 60 people in your house, there's going to be cable, there's going to be lights, there's going to be, long hours, we're going to go into the night. Until you're actually there doing it, what I always hear is, I didn't know it was going to be this bad. I didn't know there's going to be this many people. I didn't know there was going to be this many trucks.
There are people in my bed.
Right there, and that's just a good point. And we have found people in people's beds taking naps, and so you never want to set them up to think it's going to be anything different than what it actually is.
Yeah.
And pay them something, even if you have a small budget. Make them feel like it's part of the deal to get paid. Whenever you set something up for free, it never really plays out that well for anybody.
Do you have
even friends and family?
Especially with Touched by an Angel, as iconic a show as that is, do you have a memory of someone just not being at all gracious or helpful, or somebody that just blew up at you?
Well, that happened actually. We always say there's always one in every neighborhood or any business. There's always one, but there's one in particular that actually happened before we even filmed. It was when we were scouting for an episode, and this completely took me off guard. There was a small church out near Heber, and most churches were thrilled to have Touched by an Angel film at their church. Well, this particular pastor basically got angry that we asked him and started to say terrible things about the show, because it didn't talk about Jesus Christ. There was no mention of Jesus Christ in there, so our show was not good to him. So the director really wanted that church.
Really?
And the pastor said no way, and we never ended up shooting there. We found another place in Hebrew with a different faith. But most of the churches were very welcoming and saying, this is great, you're doing great things, but this guy would have none of it.
Now, over the period of years, I'm sorry if I'm
dominating the conversation.
But you have
We've just started, right?
Raquel and I are just over here playing bridge.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're swiping to the left.
No, those days are over for me.
Yeah, you've worked with a lot of people, and there's a lot of talk recently about Johnny Depp. You've worked with Johnny.
Yes, actually, I did work with Johnny, even though, I know him from The Lone Ranger and from Pirates of the Caribbean 3, but I actually worked on one of Johnny Depp's very first movie as a crew member, where I was a crew member. It was called Slow Burn with Eric Roberts and Beverly D'Angelo.
I love Eric Roberts and Beverly D'Angelo.
And he was a teenager. He was a high school kid who gets murdered in the first 5 minutes of the movie. And of course, we didn't know who Johnny Depp was then, really. I mean, and then the whole movie is about them trying to figure out who killed him, And so, yes, I worked with Johnny Depp as a crew member, and then, of course, when he came back to Utah for those other 2 iconic shows, that we brought the governor to visit with him on Pirates.
When they were doing Lone Ranger out here as well.
And that too. So we brought Governor Huntsman out to the Salt Flats. We brought Governor Herbert out to Moab, and both had very lengthy, very cordial conversations. And Johnny really told the governor how much he loved Utah, and basically he looked up and he said, "This is epic."
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I found him always to be an engaging, honest person, that if he's not in the mood to talk with you, he'll say,
Well, the one thing I remember is that before he walked back into his trailer, he stopped everybody and says, have I talked to everybody that wanted to talk to me? He kind of went around and said, because if I have, then I'm just going to go back to my trailer. But he checked out, so to speak, and said,
Okay, everybody good? Peace out.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. And it was funny because he was wearing jeans, but he had his pirate shirt on. He had just finished
That's a
the
puffy
day's
shirt
scenes. Yeah.
exactly.
Little frilly things. Yeah.
Now, our beautiful Raquel here is involved in both behind the scenes and in front of the camera, and she's, I've known Raquel for a long, long time, believe me, and as I had known CiCi, and you're just, we're not going to reveal anything, but you're just starting your big production too. You're going to be producing a film. Is there any question that you have for Marshall right now?
I have a million, actually. We can talk about those later.
Do we have time?
I don't think we have time. This is totally off the subject of anything I'm doing. It's focused on Marshall. Is there a filmmaker or an actor or a director, somebody that you would like to meet because you've met so many people over the years of filming projects here and being part of the film, or being the film commissioner. Is there anyone you haven't met that you would like to meet? Is there someone you would like to work with before your career's over?
I've never met Steven Spielberg, and that's probably the obvious answer, but I have followed his career since Duel.
I'll call Steve for you.
Thank you.
I
knew I could. If I mentioned it, I could. But you remember Duel?
Yes, that was.
It was a TV movie.
It was an NBC mystery movie.
Yes.
And that starred
Dennis Weaver.
Dennis Weaver, who was Festus on Gunsmoke. And it was basically it was Jaws. Really, it was the premise is so similar to Jaws. It's a brilliant film. It really is a brilliant film, and it's just him and a truck driver, basically. And
yeah. And I watched it when it first aired on TV. I was a big TV junkie when I was a kid in the 70s. My stepdad wrote TV. I watched a lot of TV. I was home a lot alone because anyway.
You were a latchkey child, as many of us were.
Yes, exactly. So I became very familiar with old TV shows and movies of the week. I would wait for them to come on. Brian's Song was one of my favorites, of that era.
You knew exactly where the antenna was at certain times to get the best reception.
Exactly, yeah. You got to move it around a little bit, tweak the rabbit ears and the foil or whatever you had. So, I think with that, I was like, I actually wanted to know. I was like, I don't know, 11 years old. Like, who directed this movie? Who made this movie? And it was Steven Spielberg. And then just a few years later, of course, he did Jaws, which ended up being one of my favorite all-time films.
And I've got the weirdest story because Steve and I still talk about it when I ever see him. I met Steven Spielberg at Rod Serling's house because I was going over and I was doing some interviews with Rod back when I was a kid, and Rod goes, "We're gonna have a party on Saturday. I'd like you to come." And Annie,
and was smoking at the same time.
I was smoking. Right, teaching me how to smoke. Annie, Rod's daughter, will relay this to you too, and so they were having a little pool party because they were just going to do this movie of the. For a Night Gallery with Steven Spielberg directed the very first episode of Night Gallery. He was a kid, and that was with Joan Crawford in it. And so we're all around the thing, and there's Joan Crawford, how are you? And there's this kid, Steven Spielberg. And we still talk about how surreal that was to be at Rod Serling's house with Joan Crawford. And it's just one of those, and then 30 or 40 years later, here I am interviewing him, for another project. But he is a really insightful director. I like just about everything he's done.
Yeah, and I gave you the obvious answer. Now I have one that, like, I don't even know how. So Frank Darabont, who did.
I love Frank. He's Walking Dead, created The Walking Dead.
Yeah, and Shawshank and Green Mile.
That's one of my favorite.
And
Shawshank Redemption is one of my favorites of all time.
Me too.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't direct a lot, but he directed two amazing classics.
Yeah.
That are two of my favorite movies, but he doesn't have this long list of movies he's directed. I'm like, how did you do that? How did you pull this off?
Shawshank is one of those movies that no matter where it is, it could be like 5 minutes from being over, I'll stop and watch it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so funny. Like, you can be at any part of the movie and it's still good. You're like, you gotta watch it from the beginning to really get it. Or it's only good if you understand the characters. You gotta see the whole thing. No, you can see it at any point and it's good.
Yeah.
A movie podcast should have more than just rolling on about the recent movies. It should also have stories, background, maybe hosted by an Emmy Award-winning movie critic. We have that on the Talking Pictures podcast.
And in all the years that you've been dealing with films, is there a producer or a director? You don't need to name names. It just doesn't get it. You've given them the advice, you've given them what they paid for, but they just don't get it.
No. I think.
Oh, how PC of you.
I think to a degree they all get it in different ways. For example, there was a particular director that directed multiple episodes of Touch by an Angel. Every time he would start a new episode, because they'd shoot an episode, then they'd be off for a month or two, and they'd come back and direct another one. They'd slot them in during the course of multiple seasons. Every time he would come back to direct an episode, he would be sweaty, he'd be out of breath, he'd be red-faced, he'd be angry, he'd be this and that. And I said something like, Peter, you've been doing this for so many years. Why do you have these feelings? He said, because every day feels like the first day.
As it should, though. That's
what I love about the industry, because every day is like the first day, and that's what's so great about making movies. It's like you can show up on set and you wipe yesterday clean, and you're totally new set of circumstances in the next day.
So,
as an actor, that's a really fun component of doing film. Because I did stage, so I did theater in New York for a couple years, and you do the same show every single night, 8 shows a week for your year contract or however long you stay with the show. And when I switched over from doing musical theater and the whole Broadway thing and did TV and film, it was so much more fun because it was a new experience every day. You had a new scene you shot the next day, and it makes it kind of magical, and it's the really fun part of filmmaking is the experience of doing something new every day.
Well, like this show I was working on, I was telling you about Snatchers. What I called the location, they came up to Heber, and I said, it's their field trip, because they've been shooting all in Salt Lake City area, and they came 50 miles away to shoot in Heber. I said, you guys are here on a field trip. It's nice. It's different than where you've been the last week or so.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be a movie show if we didn't also talk about a movie.
let's talk about a movie.
Let's do it.
You said Hell or High Water is one we need to see.
Yeah, Hell or High Water. It's a very, very interesting. It's a modern western, similar as No Country for Old Men. It's that type of western. In fact, it does have Tommy Lee Jones in it, as a matter of fact. And it's about these two brothers played by Chris. Well, one of them is Chris Pine
And Ben Foster.
And what's happening is the bank is foreclosing on their family farm that they've had forever, their ranch, and they decide through a series of interesting decisions to rob the bank and pay off the mortgage. So they're robbing the bank to pay them back for the. But it is a very intense. It's got every emotion you can think in this movie. It's got love. It's got hate. There's humor in it. It's a really human film, and it is so well directed and so well done. I gave it an A, and it's one of those
high rating.
Do not let it go without seeing it, because it's one of those films that you'll go, wow. At the Academy Awards, you're going to wonder,
Why it didn't win?
Why it's being mentioned, because it is that good. It is an amazing film, and I just also saw Bridge of Light, The Light Between Oceans.
I see that.
Yeah, and you'll see it in a couple of days.
Tuesday.
And again, so well done, and it's not one of those movies that have explosions in it and all of that people seem to really, but it is a really intricate, well-woven film. So those are two that I'm going to recommend.
Nice. I know. I'm looking forward to that one. I'm also looking forward to Sully. Me
too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. For obvious reasons, because of the cast and Clint Eastwood directing it. And one of my really dear friends is in it. I'm not sure how big her part's going to be, but she's Autumn Reeser. She's a really good friend of mine, so she has a part in that too. So I'm excited to see the acting. But the story is interesting because I don't know. I of course didn't hear that part of the story, right? You just hear this heroic man that sort of saved these passengers, and I really love this story. It has a lot of connection to sort of life and purpose, and like kind of finding your way but helping others as well, make it there safely, and so I actually really love that whole story, but this will be interesting to see the backstory. Kind of, it looks from the previews, it looks a little bit like, what's the Denzel Washington movie, Flight?
Yeah.
Where they kind of accuse him, like he makes a decision about the aircraft, and then
Oh,
this
so
whole...
like Tom Hanks, right?
Yes, Sully's
Sully,
Tom Hanks,
yeah.
yeah. Clint Eastwood's directing it. We've got Aaron Eckhart and Laura Linney in as well. So I'm interested to see how that pans out, but I'm looking forward to that one.
And I have seen, I was telling Tony about this earlier, today I went and saw SouthSide with You
Oh yeah.
with, I can't remember the actors' names, but it's the story of, it's basically one day in the life of Barack and Michelle Obama. The day they went out. And it's not the day they met, because they had known each other about a month in her law firm. And he finally persuades her to come to some talk. And he turns the whole day into a date. And it's the day they fall in love. But I found it rather poignant because it also brought up social issues and why each of them champions certain things that they do, like equality, women's rights, and things like that. And it, like, for me, what really stood out is Barak came to understand why women's rights and equality and equal pay and fairness were so important to Michelle, because he saw firsthand how she was treated by their own boss, and even her boss was like telling her, make sure you take care of this man tonight, wink wink, nudge nudge. And she's just like, are you freaking kidding me? And so then they're portrayed with such elegance, the two characters, that it really does capture what the public sees of FLOTUS and POTUS. I liked it. The shooting style to me was, for lack of a better term, very Sundancian. Not Hollywood polish. Somewhere between a narrative and a documentary.
Is that a good thing for you?
Yeah.
Do you like
Is
that?
The film festival.
Yeah, it depends. It was good, but as a filmmaker and an actor, it was distracting because it was obvious.
Okay. Then that's not good.
Right. Where when you
obvious.
go to Sundance, you're seeing movies from people who are climbing up, trying to make better and better movies. So when you see great quality at Sundance, you're like, bam, they hit it. Or they're learning. This is forgivable. This is good. But when you see something that's nationally released, which you're like, this was a festival piece. Because then you're like, this has the quality of a festival piece. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it wasn't the best thing, I think. And it has a limited release. It's only showing in one theater here in Salt Lake. So I was sure to see it. I was one of 4 people in the audience. But the other one I saw this week was Florence Foster Jenkins.
Yeah, good movie.
I love
Interesting. You kind of hate it and love it at the same time. All right. Well, thank you for tuning into the Talking Pictures podcast and our very special guest, Mr. Marshall Moore.
Thank you all for having me.
We love having you. In fact, we're going to maybe see you next week.
Yeah, this is a beautiful studio you have.
A little echoey.
We don't have the batting up yet, but we just to mention, we will have lots of episodes coming up with interviews from Comic-Con, Salt Lake Comic-Con, which is coming up.
Parked there for 3 days.
Or 1.5.
Or one, depending
If I
on...
get there at the end of each day.
Yeah. We'll be up there. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Tony Toscano.
I am CiCi Chambers.
I'm Raquel Horton.
And I'm Marshall Moore.
See you next week.
Yeah.
The Talking Pictures podcast is produced by Talking Pictures Productions. Produced by CiCi Chambers. Find us at www.talkingpictures.tv. Talking Pictures podcast distributed by Geek Factor Radio. Also on SoundCloud, Libsyn, and iTunes. Music and sound effects provided by bensound.com. A movie podcast should have more than just rolling on about the recent movies. It should also have stories, background, maybe hosted by an Emmy Award-winning movie critic. We have that on the Talking Pictures podcast.